Hello, today I'm reviewing The Sisters Brothers, a Patrick DeWitt novel first published in the UK in 2011 and a nominee for both the Man Booker and Walter Scott Awards. It was later also made into a film that is quite well regarded, apparently. I have seen the film, but this is a review of the book. The Sisters Brothers is a western set in Oregon and California in 1851 and follows Charlie and Eli, who narrates, the eponymous brothers who are hired killers working for a figure known as the Commodore. Eli and Charlie set out to track down Herman Kermit Warmer, prospector with a mysterious formula they are to retrieve. A good portion of this novel is devoted to the journey, something of an odyssey, you might even say, that they undertake and the strange people and situations that they find themselves in as they travel. It is, as Eli observes, a journey through a world where a town can appear out of the earth in the space of a month. Eli narrates in the first person and, for a hired killer, is a warmly engaging figure, and his docility and his keen eye for humanity and life overrides an eye for the changing world around him. Commentary by omission, possibly, but this fascination with the changes he does note are those around the encroaching urbanization and civility. Never a true killer, unlike the more dangerous Charlie, he more and more considers his own future. While a large number of the people he meets are oddballs, psychopaths, and generally out wholly for number one, by far the greatest character in the book is Tubbs, Eli's horse. Eli begins the novel by telling his reader the limits of his fondness for animals, that they extend to him refusing to name his previous animal, and that animal was a marked improvement over poor Tubbs until his unfortunate immolation. A scene that starts the novel, sets the tone ably, and is not for the faint-hearted, even narrated as it is in Eli's dispassionate and matter-of-fact style. Despite Eli's initial coldness, a later bear attack causes a change in his attitude, and Tubbs' strength of will and loyalty override any knock knees or curved spine he may have. Tubbs gets a character journey of his own, and Eli's compassion for the horse is useful in contrasting a general softness about the character with the odd burst of unemotional violence. And the unemotional violence, any violence at all really, is marginalised in this text. This is not a western where the hero rides into town, dons a sheriff badge, and sets about cleaning things up. Instead, sheriffs are a rare breed and treated with suspicion where they're mentioned at all. The violence itself is given equally rare and short shrift. From our elevated angle, the two remaining brothers proved to be the most elementary game. Less than 20 seconds had passed before they were lifeless in the sand. The consequences of that violence, however, are a regular theme. Death is a grim, grisly spectre lurking on street corners, quite literally in a memorable chapter called An Intermission. After Charlie and Eli cross paths with a woman they believe is a witch, they refuse to cross her threshold and leave the building by that most traditional of routes. Eli is too portly to exit through the window, but Charlie manages it and later returns with a borrowed axe to widen the gap. The ensuing squabble over the course of Eli's entrapment takes place surrounded by the 6 corpses of the men who owned that axe but had refused to loan it to Charlie. A very poor decision, as it turned out. They trace the problem through a string of causes and effects to the following revelation. My good men, it is a spider to blame for the early demise of your group. A woolly, fat-bottomed spider in search of warmth. Here is the cause of your deaths. Death might not be served up in pulse-pounding action sequence, but is never far away, and it's almost always grisly, senseless, and matter-of-fact, as the rest of Eli's observations are. One shootout executed in a cynical, if somewhat cliched way, ends with one gunman travelling slower than his companions to his death. What's that noise? He asked. That was a bullet going into you. A bullet going into me where? Into your head. Where's the others? They're lying next to you. Their heads have bullets also. If Eli's journey is rather more pedestrian than those typical of this genre, his general amiability and bumbling persona, the bizarre characters and places he encounters, recalls a slightly more modern Candide. That is certainly true of his odd and naive attitude towards love and sex. He's quicker to fall in love than he is to learn his paramours' names, and he is rarely appreciated by them, certainly not until he leaves. And his infatuation is usually brief, and rendered briefer still by the pragmatics of the age. One of the novel's most amusing passages details his attempts to introduce dieting rather sooner than the attitudes will allow, an arduous task undertaken in order to impress a would-be lover. The bumbling hero is met by the withering cynicism of the West, yet his own take on much of it is often flawed as well. When the brothers return to pick up some hidden loot and find the building it was in burnt to the ground, they're quick to blame its previous owner without pausing to consider that they themselves moved the stove and the chimney in order to hide the loot. Eli's narration and its flat style is often used for comedic effect, notably when he's requesting maid services during a hotel stay. 30 cents, she said monotonously. I looked at the sign above her, which still read 25 cents, but before I could speak, she told me it was 25 cents yesterday, it's 30 now, someday soon it'll be 35. A boom time for painters of signs, I said. These dashes of comedy contrast sharply with the dark and generally miserable state of America at the time, heightening their effect and helping keep Eli's narration engaging despite his unemotional style. He's further helped in that regard by his fascination with the innovations appearing in the era, such as dental care and hotel intercoms. The warmth and likability of the protagonist are the greatest strengths of DeWitt's novel. If there is something about it that's perhaps less effective, it would be certainly that things don't go very far or have no payoff at all, but generally this novel is a success. In conclusion, those looking for dusty streets suddenly full of blood and violence and wandering strangers arriving to clean up this here town, they will probably find something to satisfy their craving for a western or two elsewhere. The Sisters Brothers is an entertaining but meandering tale of two less than clean-cut characters who may or may not appreciate the coming of the time when their violent services are less in demand. Along the way we get numerous observations of the human condition, life and the wider world, perhaps even a thought or two on what lies beyond and what's truly valuable this side of that final frontier. It may not be settled by guns drawn at midday, that cliche is one the writer would probably turn his nose up at, but underpinning its pedestrian pace is a very likeable and engaging figure of Eli, a portly figure vast enough to carry any book. This one is recommended. Thanks for watching. Jewel that like button when the town clock chimes 12 and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.